Hello and welcome to today's webinar on applying to the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution. My name is Ginevra Morse, Director of Education and Online Programs. Here at New England Historic Genealogical Society, I will be moderating today's event. NEHGS is a nonprofit organization supported by our members and donors. We provide resources and expertise in nearly all aspects of family history and are pleased to offer this webinar today for our members and friends around the world. Giving today's presentation is Kathleen Kaldis, genealogist at NEHGS. Kathy is a member in the Daughters of the American Revolution, MDAR, and the Lexington DAR chapter. She has served in many leadership positions within the society at the national, state, and chapter levels. During her tenure as Chapter Registrar in the Lexington chapter, she volunteered her time actively researching lineages, gathering proof, and completing prospective members' applications. Through her efforts and research contributions, the Lexington chapter gained over 100 members. At NEHGS, Kathy assists visiting patrons to our library and research center here in Boston. So in the next 45-50 minutes or so, Kathy will review the requirements and application process for joining the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution. She will also discuss some important do's and don'ts and what to do when you encounter a roadblock. At any time during the presentation, please feel free to write a question in the panel to the right of your screen. Kathy will answer as many as she can in the last 10 to 15 minutes of the hour. We will select questions that are more general in nature, so please consider that when submitting your query. I also want to state that NEHGS is a third-party organization. We are not affiliated with the NSDAR, nor do we speak for them. This webinar is intended to be informational only and not a comprehensive or complete description of the application process and everything that you're going to potentially go through. Each applicant will have situations where general information may not apply or be accepted by the genealogists at the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution. There is no handout for this lecture, but this event is being recorded, so you can easily go back and review the video. So don't worry if you miss something on today's first listen. You can always go back, rewatch, pause, fast forward, or rewind the presentation on your own timetable as well. So I'll send a link to that recording in my email to you following the presentation. All right, so without further ado, I will turn things over to Kathy.
Welcome. I have been a proud and active member of the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution since 2010, and the current Vice Regent of the Lexington, Massachusetts DAR chapter. Over the years, I have helped many women join the NSDAR and have enjoyed assisting them in their genealogical research and through the application process. Sharing my enthusiasm for the work of the NSDAR has been a rewarding way to encourage membership for the NSDAR. The goal for each prospective member is to become an active and engaged member of the DAR. My experience as a former chapter registrar will help you out on your National Society Daughters of the American Revolution membership application journey. So what is the DAR? The National Society Daughters of the American Revolution is a lineage society for women who are direct descendants of an individual who fought in the war, provided service in the newly formed government, or provided aid to support the independence of the American colonies from England. When you join the NSDAR, you honor and pay tribute to the contributions your ancestors provided during the American Revolution, which covers the years 1775 to 1783. There are exceptions, though. The National Society Daughters of the American Revolution is headquartered in Washington, D.C. They are a nonprofit, non-political, volunteer service organization for women. There are over 170,000 current members worldwide. Within the NSDAR, there are state societies and local chapters engaging women to honor their Revolutionary War ancestors through community service. In my home state of Massachusetts, the MDAR has 39 chapters throughout the state. Each chapter is very different, and it is highly recommended that you find the chapter which meets your needs. Needs could include meeting times, demographics of the members, special projects or historical events, or even through personal connections. There can be many chapters within a close geographical region, so explore each one to see which chapter is right for you. Also, it is important to keep in mind you do not have to live locally to be actively engaged in a chapter. If you feel a connection to a chapter that has personal or historical significance to you, contact them and learn more about the chapter to see if it works for you. Many members join chapters where family members may have been members. The chapter may have been named after one of their ancestors, or the member may have grown up in a region and chose to honor their roots. There is something for everyone in the NSDAR. The NSDAR also has chapters throughout the world. Currently, there are 24 chapters located within 12 countries of the world. The National Society Daughters of the American Revolution is dedicated to promoting historic preservation, education, and patriotism. Here, you see a photograph of the NSDAR Genealogical Library. It is housed in the NSDAR Memorial Hall. The NSDAR headquarters consists of an entire downtown city block in the District of Columbia near the White House and the American Red Cross. The Memorial Hall houses the DAR Library and is open to the public for genealogical research. Constitution Hall houses the Performance Center and the auditorium. The cornerstone was laid by Mrs. Calvin Coolidge in 1928. The connecting building houses the DAR Museum and offices. The NSDAR headquarters houses one of the nation's premier genealogical libraries. It houses a collection of pre-industrial American decorative arts and has an extensive collection of early American manuscripts. The organization of the DAR of the National Society is made up of the National Society, the state societies, and then local chapters. For prospective members, the first point of contact will be at the chapter level. They are responsible for helping you with gathering the necessary lineage and service documentation, and then drafting your membership application. They do not approve your membership. That is done at the national level. At the chapter level, it is led by a chapter regent, and your application will be compiled and drafted there. They will also be the primary source of communication for you regarding chapter events and other activities the chapter might be going through. If you have any questions regarding your membership application and the status once it has gone to NSDAR, your chapter registrar is the best person to contact. This will also be the chapter where you pay your dues when it comes time to renewing your membership each year, and you can attend local and chapter meetings. At the state level is usually led by a state regent. They have meetings throughout the year and also other activities. The chapter registrar can also access other people to help you with your genealogical research if they need help with that. The national level is led by a president general. She is the one who is the head of the society. It is also led by an executive committee. They set the society's policies and protocols. There is a yearly business session that's called the Continental Congress, and it's held in June of each year. So who are the DAR members of today? DAR ladies are at the leading edge of communication with technologies. Many chapters have websites. The National Society has a website. There's Facebook groups, there's Twitter, and YouTube. They are part of innovative community-centric projects throughout the country, and there's something of interest for all ages. The NSDAR supports veterans programs, school programs, and community programs. Why would you want to join the DAR? Well, to meet new friends, of course, to honor the legacy of your Patriot ancestor, to honor the legacy of your family members who were part of the DAR, possibly a mother, a sister, a grandmother, and any female relative who was a member. You can create a lasting legacy of your genealogical research. You can work on important service projects within your community, and there's something for everybody. Membership expectations are also important. Meetings and attendance, while they're not required, it is actually fun to participate. You can be as engaged as you would like to be. Dues are paid yearly, and the most important thing is have fun. To learn more about the DAR, they have a website. The DAR's website is www.dar.org. Research can also happen at the DAR library, and you can watch a video of the DAR's impact on communities of today, and there's a YouTube link on this slide. What are the eligibility requirements? The National Society Daughters of the American Revolution has one of the highest genealogical standards within the lineage society community. The NSDAR uses the NSDAR genealogy guidelines as the primary resource for verifying NSDAR staff genealogists, state and chapter registrars, NSDAR volunteer genealogists, and other members who are assisting you with your membership application. What are the eligibility requirements in order to join the NSDAR? Well, primarily there are two types of eligibility, one for prospective members and two for your ancestor. So for the prospective member, it's who can join. For the ancestor, it's who qualifies as a Patriot ancestor. The prospective member can be any woman, ages 18 years or older, who can prove lineal descent from an ancestor, either male or female, who aided in the cause of American independence through military, civic, or patriotic service. I am often asked, what is lineal descent? It's someone who can trace their lineage by child relationships back to a specific ancestor. In the case of applying to the DAR, you want to prove that you directly descend from someone who provided service or aid during the American Revolutionary War. This would include a man or a woman whose children you descend from. Here is a visual chart of your lineal ancestors. You are lineally descended from all of these individuals: your parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, and the great-grandparents back to your Patriot ancestor. This does not include collateral relatives, such as aunts, uncles, and cousins. For your Patriot ancestor could be a man or a woman. For military service, they would have to have served during the Revolutionary War years, which is 1775 to 1783. The three types of acceptable service are military, civic, patriotic. Fifers and drummers can be as young as 14 years old, but the service must be attributed to your ancestor. With eligibility of your ancestor, the last act of service is what determines eligibility. For example, Benedict Arnold, who was a highly decorated career military officer during his work for the Continental Army, would not qualify because his last act of treason would disqualify him for membership in the NSDAR. On the flip side, if your ancestor was someone who supported England's position during the Revolutionary War, but joined the local militia company in the Continental Army in, let's say, November of 1783, that service might qualify for eligibility in the NSDAR. So military is one of the services that would be an eligible service. It would begin on the 19th of April, 1775, which is the Battle of Lexington, and it ends on the 26th of November, 1783, when the British troops withdrew from New York. You can usually prove military service using pension records and muster rolls. For more information on how to access military resources, please watch the archived NAHGS webinar by the NAHGS Chief Genealogist, David Allen Lambert, titled Early American Resources at NAHGS, Colonial Wars to the War of 1812. For civil service, that would include state and local officials, selectmen, surveyor of the road, justice of the peace, town clerks, constables, and others. According to the NSDAR genealogy guidelines, civil service is credited to those individuals who conducted public business under the authority of the new federal, state, county, and town governments and displayed evidence of loyalty to the cause of political separation from England. Town meeting records are a great resource for finding civil service. For patriotic service, that can take place as early as April of 1774. That includes committees of inspection, correspondence, and safety. It also includes Continental Congress, state conventions, and assemblies. According to the NSDAR genealogy guidelines, patriotic service, patriots of the Revolution are considered to be those men and women who act or series of actions demonstrated unfailing loyalty to the cause of the American independence from England. And there are special considerations to think about and questions. You want to think about what was the purpose of the action, what were the risks, and what were the consequences. Being a signer of the Declaration of Independence also qualifies as service. Other patriotic service can include signing oaths of allegiances or association tests, signing a petition which recognized the new state government and demonstrated loyalty to the cause of the American independence from England. Often, oaths of allegiances were conducted verbally and not documented. Some states were better than others when documenting these oaths. Patriotic service could also include the rendering of material aid, such as furnishing supplies with or without compensation, such things such as supply taxes and grand levies. Patriotic service also included the lending of money to the state or federal government. For example, John Hancock was one person who loaned money to the government. It also included the defense of the frontiers and forts. Doctors, nurses, and others who rendered aid to the wounded, prisoners of war or refugees from occupying forces, and signers of local Declaration of Independences. Ministers who gave patriotic sermons and encouraged patriotic activity would also qualify for patriotic service. Those who served the Spanish troops and privateers. Pacifists might also qualify for eligibility as patriot ancestors. According to the NSDAR genealogy guidelines, the Society of Friends, or Quakers, were pacifists and believed that the dispute between the colonists and Great Britain should be settled peacefully. While they could not participate in oaths of allegiances, they could affirm similar principles. It was common for some pacifists to provide aid to the cause, examples being medical, food, goods, or financial aid. As with any service, it is imperative to locate evidence supporting the specific act or service and attribute that service to the correct individual. So where do you begin? You are interested in becoming a member of the NSDAR. Do you have a female relative who was or is a member of the DAR? Have you identified a patriot ancestor? Do you know someone in the DAR? Have you visited the DAR's webpage, www.dar.org? The best practice when submitting an initial membership application to the DAR is for you to join the society under the Ancestor, which is the easiest to document. Connecting to a previously verified application is the best way to start on your NSDAR membership journey. If you know of a relative who was a member, you can use that application as the starting point. Depending on when your family member was in the NSDAR, you might have to update various components up to today's standards. A chapter registrar should work with you to help you decide which Patriot ancestor to join under. She can view the previously verified application and the supporting documentation within the NSDAR GRS database, and we will talk more about that later. She can use that information to guide you to the best Patriot ancestor. Certain standards must be met in order for an application to be considered for approval by the NSDAR. A quick and easy verification process is the goal of your membership application journey. In your case, choose the Patriot Ancestor, where you can connect to a recently verified application. The higher the membership number, the better. And always work with your chapter registrar for additional assistance. The NSDAR has policies regarding special circumstances. The chapter registrar is your best advocate when it comes to resolving these issues. Special circumstances could include adoption, divorces, unknown parentage, or other individual circumstances. So what is a chapter registrar? The chapter registrar is responsible for drafting and compiling your membership application. She is an officer in your chapter and can be your best advocate when it comes to information. She has tools to help you with your application. She has special training on how best to help you with your NSDAR membership journey. They know who to contact if they do not know the answer. And they are your resource once your NSDAR application has been submitted to Washington, D.C. Some of the tools that your registrar has includes e-membership. E-membership is an electronic portal where chapter registrars can monitor the status of your membership application once it reaches national headquarters. There's Build an App. Build an App is when you want to join the society under a previously verified lineage, and your registrar can start drafting your application using that information. Image Access. Your chapter registrar can view previously verified applications and the supporting documentation to see if it meets the current genealogical standards. Note, the NSDAR has privacy policies in place and protects information for living individuals. Remediation. Your chapter registrar is the best person to help you when trying to address and resolve issues from a letter that NSDAR may send you asking for further information about your application prior to approvals. Communication. Your chapter registrar is the best person to talk to with regards to chapter activities and events. And one of the best tools that the DAR has is for both registrars and the public is the tool is the DAR Genealogical Research System, also known as the GRS. The GRS can be found at www.dar.org on the DAR website. You can use the GRS to locate previously verified ancestors or relatives who have been in the DAR. The GRS is an online database service helping you identify ancestors who may have been identified by other women in their lineage. And it includes Patriot ancestors, DAR members, and ancestors from within your lineage. To get to the GRS, you go to the NSDAR website and their homepage. You click on the green GRS button. From there, you will enter the genealogical record system. This is the landing page for the GRS. There is a GRS tutorial and a video that you can watch to learn how to use the GRS system. The GRS comprises the following databases: the Ancestor database, the Member database, the Descendants database, the GRC, which includes resources that have been scanned, and those resources have been indexed. Note, the resources may not meet the current genealogical standards. You can request copies of these resources through the library's copy service. RevWar includes the Patriot Record Project Index, which is very useful for finding information about ancestors that may have loaned money to the government. It's an every name index of the Revolutionary War records. The Revolutionary War Pension Index is also there, and the Forgotten Patriots Research Guide, which deals with ancestors of the minorities, so the African American and the American Indian Patriots. There's the Bibles database. This is a newer database, and some of the resources may not meet the current genealogical standards. And under resources, there are the DAR Library Analytical Card Index and the DAR Magazine Archive. The three most used databases are the Ancestor, member, and descendants database. The Ancestor search is for your Patriot ancestor. You need at least the last name, the first name, or the ancestor's number in order to conduct a search. We are going to try and search for my ancestor, Thomas Saltmarsh. The Ancestor page, when you pull it up, will have the information about the Patriot. It'll have where he served, his birth and death information. It'll have his service proof, and it'll have his residence and his wife. In addition, you will find at the bottom of the page, as you scroll down, all of the members who joined under that ancestor. From there, you can check and click on the letter D to review the verified lineage. The first 3 generations have been blocked out for privacy reasons. You can also purchase copies of their application and/or supporting documentation if it is available. When you use the members search, you must have a national DAR number. This is useful for if you had other family members in the DAR that you knew. So for example, if your grandmother was in the DAR, you knew her DAR number, you can pull up her record by using her DAR number. This is my members search. So when you pull up my members search, this is what you get, my 3 Patriots, and then you'd be able to purchase copies from that. The descendant search. The descendant search is where you're going to find the middle generations of an ancestor's lineage. It'll help you discover the previously verified lineage for the member. This is helpful when confirming your lineage to a previously verified line or to find additional lines. The top of the page, so if we were to search for Amos Harriman, which is in my lineage, and then this is what it pulls up. The top of the page will be restricted, but then you'll be able to look at the lineage. You can purchase a record copy for this member as well on this page. This important feature allows you to see the lineage of others. Note, the information may or may not be accurate based on the information and evidence presented. In this case, the best practice is to use the newest membership number whenever you can for each generation. The higher the number, the better. But this is a great way to compare your line to somebody else's line. And at the bottom of the page, there'll be the Patriot information, so you know that you're connecting with the right Patriot. So the first steps for becoming a member of the DAR. First, you want to reach out to a local NSDAR chapter or submit a membership interest request from the NSDAR webpage at www.dar.org. Other ways you can find an NSDAR chapter is through newspapers, word of mouth, or Google. Many chapters have websites. Remember, you want to find the chapter that works for you. The next step is to start gathering the first 3 generations of your lineage and fully document the birth, death, and marriage for your first 3 generations, which consists of you, your spouse, your parents, and your grandparents. Many states limit access of records to the 20th century for non-family members. So if you were to have access to those, vital records are birth, death, and marriage records registered with local governments. It is not necessary to have all of that documentation, but starting the process is preferred. Then you want to choose your ancestor. Work with your chapter registrar to find the easiest Patriot to go for. The first ancestor you find might not be the best option for you. Then you want to complete the documentation process and confirm your lineage back to your ancestor throughout the rest of your lineage, to your previously verified membership application, to your ancestor or a previously verified application. Don't worry if you are new to genealogy and not sure how to proceed. There are many NSDAR members willing to help you with your research for free. Ask your chapter registrar for research support if you choose. Also, this is the best time to ask other family members if they would like to join the NSDAR at the same time as you. In the past, I have had the honor to help many women either continue a family legacy or start a new family tradition by joining the NSDAR altogether. When more than one person joins at the same time in the same chapter under the same Patriot, the NSDAR might approve all of the applications in succession, meaning that each individual that joins will have back-to-back DAR membership numbers. When you join the NSDAR, every member is assigned a membership number in the order in which they applied. This only works when all of the applications are submitted to the NSDAR at the same time in the same mailing envelope. Your chapter registrar can help you plan for this, and it can take time and effort to track down all of the application elements for each person. Once the application has been finalized, the yearly dues and fees will be paid to the chapter. The chapter will submit payments to NSDAR and the state society on your behalf. Your NSDAR membership application is signed and you and the members by you and other members of your chapter. Your NSDAR membership application is signed by the chapter registrar will compile the application packet and confirm the evidence that the evidence has met the current NSDAR genealogy guidelines. Your membership application goes to DAR and to Washington, D.C. for the verification process. The chapter registrar will prepare and package your NSDAR membership application packet for submission and will send it to NSDAR. And in some cases, this is what your application will look like. And in some cases, there might be more, there might be less of the proof. The NSDAR application process is that the chapter registrar mails your application to NSDAR. The application packet arrives at NSDAR headquarters. The NSDAR data entry team assigns your application to an NSDAR staff genealogist. Your application is reviewed by the staff genealogist. Now note, this can take many months. This is not a quick process, so please be patient. You'll want to contact your chapter registrar if you have any questions about the status of your application during this time. If the staff genealogist has questions or if there were gaps within the documentation, a letter will be sent to you and the chapter registrar with instructions on how to resolve the pending issues. The chapter registrar can provide assistance when resolving these letters. Once you have satisfied all of the requirements, your membership application is approved. We will discuss problem resolution later in this program. So what are the application basics? The DAR application. There's general information about the DAR application is that your application should be drafted by your chapter registrar. It is printed on special archival paper, and the DAR uses the genealogical proof standard when evaluating and verifying the information within the application. Page 1 of the application will include your contact information, the eligibility clause, all of the required signatures, which include your signature and other chapter members, a member-for-member credit, so if there's someone that you feel that has helped you the most in your membership journey, that is the person that you choose to have credit for the member-for-member. Your membership approval endorsements will go here as well in the shaded box, and then there'll be chapter member endorsements at the bottom of the page. Page 2 will include all of the lineage information, and that includes the generations for you, which is at the top of the page, and then it'll include the mother and father for each generation down to your Patriot. That includes the birth information, death information, marriage information, and generational linkage. Note, all names will be entered as they appear on the birth record or the record closest to the birth event. In some cases, it could be a death record or a military record. A note about spelling. One of the questions I'm always asked is about spelling. Well, the NSDAR has their own spelling standardization system. The system is set up so that similar sounding names are grouped together. The chapter registrar is doing her job when a name is spelled a certain way on the application. Page 3 of the application are the references for the lineage and the citations for the evidence submitted. The NSDAR has a simple principle when submitting documentation to support each fact. Cite what you send and send what you cite. The NSDAR has their own system for writing out the citations for the supporting documentation and standard abbreviations. Your registrar will know those and will have that at her disposal. Page 4 of the application deals with the Ancestor service. The Ancestor service will be indicated along with the service proof. You will have the approval verification of your membership in the boxes at the middle of the page. The marriages for your ancestor will be listed as well, along with the children. Now the marriage and the children section here, it will not be verified. However, it's used as an identification fingerprint, and it'll help with identifying the correct patriot with the correct family. Sometimes you will find that there will be multiple people with the same name living in the same town, and the children and the spouses act as an identifier to help make sure that you have the right ancestor. The application process uses the best documentation. So the best documentation is information from previously verified membership applications, vital records. It includes local, county, state, or federal records such as land, probate, immigration, military, etc. It includes census records, obituaries, funeral cards, letters, and Bibles can also be used. You need to also make sure that you work with your chapter registrar because certain standards must be met for all of these documentation, all of the vital records listed there. Records to avoid: published genealogies, family trees, lineage papers from other lineage societies such as Mayflower or SAR, and this does include what's called as the silver books, the Mayflower families or first 5 generations, indexes to vital records, your grandmother's genealogy notes. As much as they are lovely and wonderful, they will not be accepted. The do's and don'ts when preparing an application. Organize your documentation. I always recommend having a folder for each generation when you present it to your chapter registrar. It'll make it easy for her to help look at the documentation. You want to look for the best Patriot ancestor. You want to find at least one document to connect each generation back to your Patriot ancestor. You want to start documenting the line using various vital records. And work with your chapter registrar, and she will draft your application, your membership application. So the don'ts of the application process. You don't want to stick with a difficult, hard to prove Patriot ancestor that may never be approved or even find the evidence to approve that Patriot ancestor. It does happen. You do not want to submit online trees to your registrar. You do not want to submit original documentation. And most importantly, you do not want to go it alone. There's support out there. Here at NEHGS, we offer consultations with the genealogist, and we have a research services that'll help prepare the documentation for you. Your chapter registrar can help you, and the NSDAR has a lot of volunteer genealogists who love to help you with your lineage or service documentation. So resolving documentation hurdles. Some of the most common reasons for letters from the NSDAR are unacceptable documentation, the dates do not make sense, or the places do not make sense. There's more than one person of the same name in the same area. Step-parents and adoptive parents were included on the application. Parents were married after the applicant was born. The ways to resolve the documentation hurdles. Well, don't panic. We have a saying in the DAR that you bake brownies when you have documentation problems. So bake brownies. Try to find an alternative Patriot ancestor. You want to review the records for additional clues. there may have been something that was overlooked that might help you find another piece of evidence that'll help you resolve the whole thing. You want to research collateral family members, create and use a research plan, and always ask for help. There's certain genealogical truths that happen. A child cannot be born before his or her mother is born. A child cannot be born well after the mother has died. You cannot be in two places at the same time. Two non-twin siblings cannot have a birthday within 8 months of each other. Not everything is online, and spelling is relative. Everything was recorded how it sounded. There will be times that you will experience conflicting evidence. Analyze all of the data before you submit the information to NSDAR for review. Here is an example where the information handed down through the generations was incomplete and therefore inaccurate. This is a case study that I had when I was a chapter registrar. I was one of those chapter registrars who enjoyed researching the lineage for my prospective members who wanted to join the NSDAR. It was common for me to work with prospective members at the earliest stage of their membership journey. In this case, a prospective member came to me with a family tree and a family lore stating that they were eligible for membership in the NSDAR. The primary starting point was a family tree noting various family members. The goal was to find who was the mother of John Bowling. There were 2 wives and one was circled. So the case study is, what do we know from the family tree? Well, John Bowling was descendant from Elijah Bowling and Nancy Santers, possibly, because her name was circled on the family tree. John Bowling was born in 1855, and it appears as if Susanna Roberts and Elijah Bowling were married in 1819. So I was working with this prospective member trying to link John Bowling to his parents, Elijah Bowling and Nancy Santers. According to this family tree that had been handed down, Elijah Bowling was a descendant of someone who had served in the Revolutionary War. Someone in their family conducted research and gave her this tree. I researched the line, but as I was documenting the lineage, things were not adding up. The marriage notation on the family tree for Elijah Bowling and Susanna Roberts stated that they were married in 1819. The time span between the marriage of Elijah Bowling and Susanna Roberts seemed a little too large for a child that was born in 1855. And there were many children noted on the tree, so that was not impossible. However, the age spans within the children suggested certain clusters of children born around the same time with gaps in between the clusters. This might suggest different mothers. Again, not impossible since it was common for children to die young and they may not have been represented on the tree. The 1860 census record supported that a Nancy Bowling was a member of the same household of Elijah Bowling and John C. Bowling, aged 5. But the marriage record for Elijah Bowling and Nancy Santers stated that they were married on the 20th of September, 1859. The marriage was well after the birth of John Bowling. At this point, I started questioning who was the actual mother of John C. Bowling. Additional research was needed in order to verify the correct mother of John Bowling. Susanna Roberts Bowling died in 1846, so it was impossible for John C. Bowling to have been descended from Susanna Roberts Bowling. Could he have been the son of someone else? We found the death record for John C. Bowling. Here's his death record. The death record for Dr. John C. Bowling listed his parents as Elijah Bowling and Anna Keene. The mother listed was not Susanna Roberts or Nancy Santers. The death record helped, but now there is the possibility of another wife for Elijah Bowling. When I tried to locate information for Anna Keene, all I could do was prove that a Keene household resided next door to the Bowling family. The 1850 census record did not help with the identity of John Bowling's mother. In 1850, there was a Mary Ann Bowling that resided in the household. However, no relationships were given, and the age difference was problematic. Was this a daughter? Was this a wife? Unfortunately, since there were no relationships, I couldn't assume that she was the head of household. The death record did provide an exact birth date. So was there a birth record? I was able to find the birth record for a John Bowling. He was actually born on the 5th of August in 1854 in Breathitt County, Kentucky, and was the son of Elijah Bowling and a Permalia Keene. So the mother was listed on the application as Permalia Keene. So therefore, we have at least 3 people that could have been the mother. And we actually know because the birth record was listed, the birth record stated it was Permalia Keene, so that was what was listed. So what did we learn? We learned that John C. Bowling was the son of Permalia Keene and Elijah Bowling. We also learned that Elijah Bowling had 3 wives. We do not know the marriage date for Permalia Keene, but there were 3, Susanna Roberts, Permalia Keene, and Nancy Santers. So as you are organizing and researching your lineage, be on the lookout for similar situations. You will want to resolve all conflicts prior to the submission to NSDAR. So as a review, the DAR is a volunteer service organization honoring Patriot ancestors who provided service in the Revolutionary War. You want to find a local chapter that fits you and your personality. You want to work with local chapter registrars when working on your application. You want to document your lineage using acceptable resources as evidence, and seek help if you encounter documentation problems. Thank you so much for joining us today.
All right, thank you, Kathy, for that great presentation. So let's pause here and see if you have any questions. Go ahead and type your query into the questions panel on the right of your screen, and we'll try to get to as many as we can in the next 15 minutes or so. So a number of questions about DNA. Does the DAR accept DNA evidence?
Yes, they do. However, they have a very limited scope using the Y DNA. So work with your chapter registrar if that is a possibility for your case.
Great. And let's see. So Carolyn asks, if you have multiple eligible ancestors, how difficult is it to add them kind of after joining? So I think it's often referred to as a supplemental application. What is that process like?
For a supplemental application, it is the same process as a new member application, except you're a member. So what you do is you cite all the evidence just as you would cite. You'd use the same application as a regular new member application, and it's the same thing. And there are people that have many. In fact, I think there's someone that has over 50, and there might even be, she might be approaching 60 supplementals at this moment in time. So yes, it is part of the fun of DAR, trying to claim more Patriots and doing the research. So it never ends.
Now, you suggested kind of looking for the easiest route to joining. So finding that Patriot that's been well documented, that you can easily document yourself. How difficult is it to kind of introduce a whole new ancestor? So, you know, someone who isn't represented in the database, are there additional steps that you need to take in order for your ancestor to be recognized?
Yes, the process for a new ancestor is similar to that of a previously verified ancestor. However, you must also make sure that you prove residency, and the residency goes along with the service. So work with your chapter registrar. It happens all the time, and we love new Patriots, or the NSDAR loves new Patriots.
Now, we have a number of questions regarding the CAR, the Children of the American Revolution, and the SAR, Sons of the American Revolution. Could you maybe comment on, is there any formal affiliation between the NSDAR and these other lineage organizations? Are there, if you have, I think you mentioned this, if you have a confirmed SAR application, can you kind of use that for someone to join the DAR? So maybe if you could just kind of comment on that relationship, if there is one.
So the SAR and the DAR and the CAR, they are all three separate organizations and separate societies. However, the CAR is closely affiliated with the DAR. And we do, the DAR does have a process. So if you were CAR and you're joining the DAR, it's a slightly different process when you become a DAR member. The SAR does allow for DAR applications to be used as evidence, but it does not work in reverse. So if there's an SAR application, you cannot use that as proof for the DAR.
And regarding the case study that you presented, what was the outcome? So you didn't have the marriage date for, I don't even know how to say her name, Miss Keene and Dr. Bowling. I mean, what did the DAR accept that? Did you have to do some additional research to kind of get around that? What was the outcome?
The outcome was that they accepted her as the mother, and the DAR does not require marriage records. However, if you have it, they would like to see that. And also, marriage records can be very useful when it comes to generational linkages. So it's always recommended to submit it if you can find it, but it is not required. So I was able to leave that information blank, and it was fine. What's very handy with marriage records is generally what happened in the earlier, like during the 1800s, sometimes marriage records would just be the couple. So you would just have the couple's name and the marriage date and the marriage location, and maybe the minister who married them. There would not be the parents. However, if there was some sort of a death and then there was a remarriage, sometimes the remarriages on those records might include, since they're later, might include the parents. So that sometimes is the only way that we can prove that the parents are generational linkage between the child and the parent. So there is a need for marriage records, but they are not required. They do like it, as I just said, and but they are not required.
And a few questions about annual dues and the cost for completing the application process.
Annual dues are individual based on the chapter dues for the amount of the chapter, state, and national dues. Right now, the national dues, I believe it's $39, and there is an application fee. Now you have to pay for the dues. Before I forget, the annual for dues that you submit when you join and annually after that, you pay all of it at once to your chapter. Your chapter then pays the state, and then your chapter will then forward the dues to national. So when you pay, you're not just paying only the DAR's portion for national, you're paying all three. And it does vary depending on the chapters. Does the chapter have a chapter house? Is there a state project or a chapter project? So it does vary at that, but for the most part, that's why you want to also look for chapters. Some chapters, some people, cost is a factor. So I do recommend that you also look for if dues are a consideration, find out what they are before you apply. As far as an application fee, the DAR has a $75, as of today, $75 for the application fee. This webinar will be archived. So as of September of 2018, it's $75. That includes for whether it's a new member application or a supplemental application. So that's one-time fee for whichever application you're submitting it, and that's mandatory. And even dues are mandatory.
And how do you find a local chapter?
The best way to do that is you can be assigned a chapter through the national website. The national website has a membership interest form that you can fill out. A state membership chairman will contact you, talk about what your needs are, and then they'll work within their state to figure out what chapter will work for you. There's also Google. Many chapters have websites or even Facebook. My chapter, the Lexington chapter, has a Facebook page. So you can find us on those social medias. So find a chapter. You can also look for newspapers. Many chapters actually announce their meetings in the newspapers. If they meet at a public place, they might even be part of the schedule for those meeting places.
And just to clarify, do you need to be a member already to work with the chapter registrar?
No, you do not have to be a member to work with a chapter registrar. Chapter registrars work routinely with what we call prospective members. So yeah, you can even participate in events at the chapter. My chapter, we love prospective members. So we get them going on projects right away. So yeah, there's something for everybody. So you can be as active as you want or as not active as you want. It's fine.
And can you join multiple chapters?
You have to join one chapter. You can have what's called where you're an associate member of other chapters. I currently am an associate member in 2 chapters, and it's a fun way to, if you want to recognize your ancestors' geographic location, if you have friends in that chapter. We have a lot of people up here in the Northeast that end up spending the winter down in Florida, so they're associate members down in Florida. So yeah, you can belong to as many as 2 in each state. You are limited, but there's 50 states to choose from, and then you can also choose the international chapters as well. It's a fun way to meet people and to engage in other chapters, because every chapter is different, and there's different activities for the different makeups of the chapter and what people suggest. So it's a great way to be an engaged member.
And if you move, maybe it wasn't a right fit for you with a certain chapter, how easy is it to kind of transfer your membership to another chapter?
Oh, it's easy to. As soon as your membership is approved, you can transfer out to another chapter. The only limitation is that you're only allowed to transfer once a year. My chapter, we're in Lexington, Massachusetts. We have an Air Force base right nearby. So we have a lot of people coming in and out that are moving in and out of the region. So it happens all the time. And it's also okay, you want to find the chapter that's right for you, so you can transfer, but they have the one limitation, which is you can only transfer once per year.
Now, Elizabeth asks, how have the application requirements changed? And she mentions looking at kind of older applications and not really providing a lot of information. Can you kind of comment on how some of the standards have changed over time?
The way that some of the standards have changed was the earlier applications only had dates and minimal citations. It used to be, you could say, well, my grandmother was a member, and it was a little bit different. They still had to go through a process. You still had to prove the service of the Patriot and the lineage, but you could use genealogies, you could use family papers. That has stopped because they found that a lot of those lineages had some errors. And in fact, a lot of the lineage books are actually on places like Ancestry, and we have them here. We have the lineage books, and many libraries have the lineage books, and people use them all the time. And it presented the lineage of the members. Many of those lineages have errors. So don't be surprised if a chapter registrar says, well, this generation needs to be strengthened. This information no longer meets the standard. So now you have to have vital records. Every fact you add to your application has to be cited. So that includes, death and birth information. It includes places, even linkages. So you can no longer use published genealogies, but you can use them as breadcrumbs. So find out where they got their information, because that information is there somewhere. So for example, if they reference, well, a probate record, go find the probate record. If they mention a land record, go find the land record. If they mention a Bible record, some people have Bible records. Now, the DAR requires for Bible records that you have certain pieces of information to support the provenance of that. And work with your chapter registrar to make sure that it meets the guidelines. But you can use certain things to help you, but it has to meet the standards. And it's all to help confirm lineages and make sure that it's as correct as it can possibly be.
Thank you. And so does illegitimacy negate membership in the lineage if it comes through the mother and not the unknown father? You kind of talked about some of these documentation hurdles and other issues that come up. So does illegitimacy negate membership?
No, it does not. In fact, I have in my Thomas Saltmarsh line, I have an illegitimate line. My great-grandmother was basically, it took 6 pieces of information to kind of pull together her father's information, and I was going through the father. I got a little bit from one record, a little bit from another, and it compiled a whole picture. And on my application, there was a complication because there was another family that lived a couple towns over that was a complete family with the same unusual names. And it was when my mother joined, I had to do a proof argument to kind of correct everything and clarify everything. But it does happen. And we go through adoptions all the time. I have worked a few times with adoptions where they knew their birth parents and where they didn't. The DAR is very accommodating depending on the circumstance, and work with your chapter registrar because they can work with the state registrar. They can even work with the genealogist to be able to find out what they need to satisfy certain requirements. It's a case-by-case basis. There is a lot of sensitivity to that, and I have seen, my experience has dealt with some, situations, and they have been great in working with that. So it's where it's a case-by-case basis. It's hard to be able to say, a situation because things are very individual in those circumstances, and it does take a dialogue, and that's where your chapter registrar can help.
All right, I know we're over time, but you have so many great questions here, maybe just one or two more. So just with the documentation that you submit with your application, do those copies need to be certified or notarized? Can you, if you see something on, say, Ancestry, an original image of a document, can you print those out and submit them? Can you just kind of talk about, as far as the documentation that's provided, how official do they have to be?
You do not need to have it as certified records. The images from Ancestry works. I usually like to, when I submit an application, I like to print off the citation page or at least something that shows where it came from. I'm not sure exactly what happens and what they do with it, but I like to send it because I'd rather have it there and have them not need it than have them need it and have it not there. Everything also is cited. The registrar will cite Mass Vital Records on Ancestry.com or whatever it is. They will cite where they got it from. When you get records from a municipality, more and more records are becoming certified, where if you request a record, it's harder to get a genealogical copy. Some municipalities still do a genealogical copy, and that's fine. And for the most part, work with your chapter registrar. They will know exactly what is allowed and not allowed. The indexes are not allowed. So for example, you'll get where on Ancestry, it'll show you a birth record and it'll have an index. That is not allowed, but if you can go and find that record, they will allow that.
All right, and one final question. Kelly asks, so what is the typical turnaround time from submitting the application to hearing whether or not it was approved?
This does vary depending on a lot of factors. Currently, it's about, I want to say about 4 to 6 months, depending on if there's a letter, if there's vacations and things like that down at National, and also if there's conventions. But it's where your chapter registrar will have access to the dates. Now, that does not mean that you bug your chapter registrar every week, but your chapter registrar is the one that'll let you know when you've been approved. Once you've been approved, and the staff genealogist will verify your application, your membership will be approved the next 5th of the month. And what'll happen is about 4 to 6 weeks after that, you will receive your official member packet from NSDAR, which will include a nice booklet with some information and your member certificate. So that'll be just about 4 to 6 weeks after the approval.
Well, thank you again, Kathy, for a fantastic presentation, and thank you, everyone, for your great questions. If you want more one-on-one assistance with your application or with your genealogical research, please feel free to contact us and consider scheduling a consultation at consultations@nehgs.org. Or if you'd like even more help and perhaps do research on your behalf, you can also hire our research services team. And if interested in learning more about that, you can contact research@nehgs.org. NEHGS members do receive discounts on both of those services. So thank you again for joining us today. As you leave today's event, you will be asked to complete a survey and offer your comments on this presentation. As we continue to expand our online education offerings, any and all feedback is extremely helpful and appreciated. If you'd like to learn more about upcoming online educational programs, please visit our online learning center at americanancestors.org/education, and I hope to see you online in the future. Goodbye for now.